shown that if we try to paclitaxel in weekly regime, so more or less outcome-wise, they are not better than 3 weekly, but yeah, tolerability is good. This is the final outcome after the recent trials. So for these type of patients, carcinoma, ovarian advanced stage, only problem thing is that the recurrent ovarian cancer, because we know that serous epithelial carcinoma, they are bound to have recurrence sooner or later. So, and it becomes a chronic disease. So, over 70% of all women who are diagnosed with ovarian cancer will have recurrent disease. And good part is that they are living longer with better quality of life with recurrent ovarian cancer. Because earlier we used to see that with the recurrent ovarian cancer, they are surviving for 1 or 2 years, 3 years. But nowadays we are seeing patients after second line, third line, fourth, fifth, sixth, they are surviving even beyond 5 years. These type of patients. That is remarkable improvement in last 1 decade or so. This is very good slide in which they have shown the natural history of any patient of carcinoma ovary. Once they present with any symptoms like early satiety, abdominal fullness, bloating, dyspepsia, or without any symptoms, just abdominal distension. So then we make a diagnosis with the CA-125, ultrasound, CT scan, then biopsy. Either we go for primary cytoreductive surgery and then give the chemotherapy. That is chemotherapy first line. Or if there is not adequate surgery, then we have to go for the second look surgery. After that, lot of trial have come in the form of consolidation treatment or maintenance treatment after completing the 6 months course of chemotherapy, whether they are beneficial or not. Yes, now the final result is there. Maintenance treatment do have advantage in this scenario. After some period of time, maybe 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, whatever period, they again get progression, and then we give the second chemotherapy. It may be same or different from the chemotherapy one, depending on the time gap. And again, the secondary cytoreduction can be considered if there is a good interval, more than a year or so in the recurrence period. And then third chemotherapy is given, and then keep on doing this after a gap of whatever period we have. In the end, we obviously give some supportive care till the end. So till the end, we sometimes land up in giving 4-5 lines of chemotherapy on an average. With that, it becomes a clinically chronic disease as such. So this was all about natural history. And regarding the timing of the recurrent cancer, because our timing, the treatment of this scenario depends on the timing when they get recurred. So one is platinum resistance, another is platinum sensitive. Means the gap between the completion of platinum treatment and the recurrence. So prior chemotherapy treatment, and our goal is to improve the quality of life and longevity. So options we have discussed just now: chemotherapy or surgery in selected cases where the time gap is more than a year, or some newer treatment options are coming, such as biological therapies in these scenarios. So recurrent ovarian cancer, they may present as a asymptomatic disease, because on follow-up we call the patient every 3 monthly, 4 monthly, and on investigation they might have some biochemical or some radiological, but patient may not be symptomatic that much. So they may be completely asymptomatic. Only biochemical rise in the CA-125 might be there, or radiological disease. And outcome-wise, on the after the treatment, we measure as a complete response, partial response, stable disease, or progression in the disease. So, what is the longevity? What do you mean by longevity in this scenario? Means we increase the time span between the second progression. So, progression-free interval is increased, and obviously this will increase the overall survival also. And how we are defining the progression, either based on CA-125, that is simple in which scan of or sometimes it is scan physical examination or where we define the progression in that particular patients. If we call about the biochemical progression, so double upper limit of normal on 2 occasions, at least 1 week apart. So this was the one criteria which is mentioned in the literature, that is GCIG criteria to label as a progression of the disease. So often elevated 2 to 5 months prior to clinical relapse. So there is a time gap. Why it is important? Because sometimes we say, yeah, disease is there, it has come back, or recurrence is there, but still we won't like to treat because asymptomatic rise in CA125. Recommendation are that we can keep under her on close follow-up without any active treatment. So that was a graph in which they have shown Rustin et al., which was published in Lancet, whether on just on the basis of CA125, if we start the treatment, does it going to help in long run in increasing the overall survival? So this graph is clearly showing if we start the treatment at early stage or delayed stage, delayed means whenever the patient becomes symptomatic. So outcome wise, there is not much great difference. So therefore, early versus delayed are more or less same. So we can delay the treatment till the time patient gets symptoms. Now, so there are two scenarios we have divided: platinum sensitive recurrence, platinum resistant recurrence. So platinum sensitive, there are 4 or 5 options as mentioned in the standard guideline world over. Either we can repeat the same chemotherapy which was given in the upfront setting, that is again paclitaxel and carboplatin, or carboplatin alone, or sometimes we can even use the docetaxel carboplatin combination or liposomal doxorubicin along with carbo or gemcitabine. So there are 4 or 5 options which can be used in this scenario, and more or less all are showing the same result. And this was the landmark study which was published by Puzade et al. In 2010 and still being practiced quite oftenly. That was a Calypso study in which they analyzed liposomal doxorubicin along with carboplatin, despite the patient is in the sensitive phase. Because most of the time we see whenever the patient comes to the sensitive phase, we tend to use paclitaxel again, reuse of paclitaxel, or at the most change to docetaxel. But this Calypso trial was the one which showed that rather than using the same taxane, it is better to change this carboplatin partner to the PLD, that is pegylated liposomal doxorubicin. With this combination, median progression-free survival was better than the this one control arm from 9.4 to 11.3 months. So at least 3 month benefit is there in the PLD arm. So that was about the Calypso trial. And if we talk about another scenario, where is the platinum resistant. Again, so many options depending on the patient, affordability, performance status, desire. We can choose any of these options. Docetaxel, oral etoposide, gemcitabine, liposomal, weekly, topotecan, bevacizumab. So oral etoposide or endoxifen we sometimes use as a oral metronomic therapy where patient is not willing for injectable chemotherapy again and again. So we can very well opt for this oral metronomic. And we have seen patients who are continuing to respond with this oral metronomic therapy only for around 1 year or even more than that. So it is not like that these doesn't work. They are at par with the sometimes with the injectable chemotherapy also. So after these two scenarios, there comes the role whether we can add upon some chemotherapeutic drugs in terms of response rate, outcome. So there was a bevacizumab, that is humanized monoclonal antibody against VEGF receptor. So how does this act in this scenario? Like we can see this in the picture, there is a tumor, and all around it there is a new blood vessel formation. So these all neoangiogenesis, these are abnormal leaky blood vessels. Because of these leaky blood vessels, there are some leakage of the fluid, because of which there is a rise in the interstitial pressure around the tumor cells, around the blood vessels, because of which rise of interstitial pressure, there is a compression of the blood vessels. So chemotherapy drug delivery also to the target is reduced because of that pressure. So taking this hypothesis into account, this angiogenesis inhibitor was tried, and they have shown very good, remarkable response, not only in carcinoma ovary, but also in many other solid tumors like colorectal carcinoma, even lung cancer. So they have shown the better response along with chemotherapy. So this was the basic mechanisms behind this angiogenesis inhibitor. So this was one of the first biological treatment for ovarian cancer, which is effective, as I said, in colon, breast, and lung cancer also. So duration is around every 2 to 3 week interval, depending on the treatment of a chemotherapy partner. And limited side effect, but significant potential toxicity are there, which we should be aware of for all these toxicity. Regarding recurrent ovarian cancer for bevacizumab, there are 3 trials which we should keep in mind as a clinical medical oncologist. First is platinum-sensitive recurrent ovarian cancer. There are 2 trials, GOG213 and OCEAN. For resistant, there is the Aurelia trial. In all these 3 trials, bevacizumab has been combined with some chemotherapy. In the sensitive, they have been combined with drugs. In the resistant, they have been combined with single-agent chemotherapy. And if we see the sensitive recurrent, overall response rate is in the tune of 60 to 70% in all these trials, and PFS is also increased with good hazard ratio, and overall survival is also better in the bevacizumab arm. Like it is up to 42 months, so it is good, around 4-year lifespan in even recurrent ovarian cancer, average lifespan. So platinum resistant recurrent ovarian cancer, even in those there is a 1.5-year lifespan. So first we discussed the OCEAN study, which was a phase 3 study, and it was a second-line gemcitabine carboplatin along with bevacizumab in the patients who are having recurrent ovarian cancer. So these patients were the platinum sensitive, and they were progressing on the first-line chemotherapy, and no prior bevacizumab was allowed in the area. So gem carbo in the standard doses, day 1, day 8, bevacizumab in the 15 milligram per kilogram in the experimental arm. So dose in more or less all the trial we have seen that it is roughly equivalent to 5 milligram per kilogram every week. If somehow we are forced to use 2 weekly, then 2 weekly we would like to use up to 10 milligram per kilogram, or if 3 weekly, then 15 milligram per kilogram. So this is the standard dosing about the bevacizumab in the ovarian carcinoma. So regarding the result in the OCEAN study, so investigator assessed PFS. The orange curve is showing the experimental arm in which bevacizumab was added, and it has shown that 12.4 months in the PFS period as compared to 8.4. So 4 months advantage is there, and response rate wise it is 20% higher from roughly 60 to 80. And if you see the duration of response is also higher around 3 months, and p-value is quite significant. So beyond doubt, this is has become the standard regime as of now. Bevacizumab along with gemcitabine and carboplatin in the sensitive setting. If we talk about oral survival, there is also beneficial in the this experiment in the initial, and later on the curves are overlapping a little bit. So definitely it's not inferior at least. Then after this OCEAN trial, they have analyzed the side effect profile also of this bevacizumab. Placebo arm, we see thromboembolic events was there, but it was very minimal in the placebo arm. In the bevacizumab, there are high percentage, 2.4%, arterial thromboembolism, 4.5% venous. So almost double of that placebo. So quite a good significant number. Bleeding CNS is there, very less chances. Neutropenia almost similar in both arms. GA perforation is also slightly higher, not very high in that incidence, which we used to get afraid of this drug, that GA perforation might be there, but chances are 0.8% only. So wound healing complication is also not much. Proteinuria is definitely there, quite a good number. Bleeding, mostly epistaxis is also quite common. Hypertension is also quite common. So from this analysis, we reached that there are 3-4 side effects, which we can say they are sort of class side effect. One is hypertension, another is bleeding, usually epistaxis. In some patients, we have taken history of epistaxis. This is most common presentation. Sometimes patient, if they have symptoms of side effect from this bevacizumab, and then proteinuria. So we have to measure the proteinuria judiciously, 24-hour urine protein. only then only will we realize that patient is developing proteinuria. Otherwise, there are very good chances we will miss the proteinuria. After that, there was a standard landmark study which was published by the Coleman in Lancet Oncology 2017, and it was also a phase 3 GOG 213. In this trial, they have combined paclicarbo again because we know that this is also a sensitive disease, platinum sensitive disease, although it is recurrent ovarian, and also they have taken PPC, primary peritoneal carcinoma or fallopian tube. So again, paclicarbo 175 mg per meter square and bevacizumab 15 mg per year 3 weekly. After that, even maintenance was given 15 milligram per kilogram every 3 weekly. I think in this trial they have given for 1.5 years, 15 month or so. If I'm not wrong, I have to check 15 month roughly for bevacizumab as a maintenance regime. PFS good number, like there was 13.8 months, 3 months difference is there as like the previous OCEAN study. OS is also higher, 42 months, roughly around 4 years. And if you see the side effect profile is also more or less similar as we see in the OCEAN study. Then the scenario comes platinum resistant recurrent ovarian cancer. And that was the Aurelia study. This was also a randomized phase 3 trial of bevacizumab along with chemotherapy. Only difference is that here chemotherapy was the treatment of physician choice, and in this all were taken into consideration. It may be PLD, pegylated liposomal doxorubicin, topotecan or paclitaxel. So all these chemotherapy were allowed, and in fact they were treated until progressive disease. In the Aurelia again, bevacizumab addition gave the better result. Overall response rate was also more than doubled, and PFS also was almost doubled. OS survival was also more than around 1.5 years with the Aurelia trial. So this was the intention to treat population. Now in the subgroup analysis, they have seen with the paclitaxel. PFS on overall survival was better with the bevacizumab arm. So difference is much if we analyze the paclitaxel arm. Like if you see in the PFS, there was a 7-month difference. And with the topotecan, also there was some good difference, 6 months to 2 months in the PFS, 4-month difference was there. With PLD, difference was not although that much great, but definitely it's there. Side effect profile, again hypertension, proteinuria, GI perforation was not there in the chemotherapy, but was seen in bevacizumab. So more or less similar type of side effects were seen with the bevacizumab. Now, after this routine use of chemotherapy and bevacizumab, there comes the scenario whether all ovarian cancer are hereditary or not. So with this slide, this is very good slide which showing this pie chart. Most common incidence is the sporadic, and only 10 to 15% case of carcinoma ovary which come to us are hereditary. Right? Among the hereditary cases, so BRCA1 represents the 70 to 75%, 2/3 are the BRCA1. Only 3% are BRCA2, and the rest are another genetic markers, HNPCC or some other markers. So 10 to 15% were the hereditary. So whether there is any change in the treatment for this subset, hereditary carcinoma, we will come to that. Basically, the patients who have BRCA1 mutation, so they are high chances of developing ovarian cancer. How much high? Roughly around 40 to 50% chance that lady is going to have ovarian cancer in lifetime. Mutated BRCA2, 10 to 25%. So chances are less than the BRCA1. Normal BRCA also has got some chances, 2%, means in the normal population. Now, so after this distribution of BRCA mutation, so BRCA mutation HRD, what is the correlation? HRD means homologous recombination deficiency. So mutation, whenever there is a mutation in the homologous recombination pathway, which leads to HRD, which is deficient HR pathway. And this can happen in either of these 4 scenarios. Four scenario means these four quadrant. Germline BRCA mutation, they may be having HRD positive. Germline non-BRCA mutation, they may be having HRD positive. Sporadic also may be having, and here also may be having HRD positive. So this is the common factor in among all, apart from the BRCA mutation positivity. So regarding HRD, what is the basic mechanism? Whenever there is a DNA strand breakage, suppose there is a break in the single strand, so DNA single strand break occur all the time in the cells, and PARP enzymes detects and repair them. So that is the normal function of the PARP enzyme. So during the replication process, the replicating which was unrepaired, they are converted into the double strand breaks, and after that either they can go for the homologous recombination repair, or if that is deficient, so no effective repair is there, and tumor gets killed because repair pathway is not there. So basically, if PARP is inhibited, this single strand break converts into the double strand break, and repair can happen down the line over here. Here, repair mechanism is deficient because of PARP inhibitor. Because they trap the PARP enzyme on the single strand only, because of which repair mechanism is deficient. So PARP inhibitors are also there, which have come into the clinical practice. Olaparib, Rucaparib, Neriparib. So what is their recommendation? These are the recommendation of PARP inhibitor as a current indication we see. First is Olaparib, first line maintenance treatment for BRCA mutant advanced ovarian cancer. Other drugs are not approved for this setting. I believe this was based on the SOLO 1 trial, which will come to that. Even maintenance therapy for recurrent ovarian cancer, it is regardless of BRCA mutation status. So this indication is common all across board for all three molecules. For Olaparib, fourth line and beyond treatment for advanced ovarian cancer with germline BRCA mutation is recommended, and Rucaparib is also recommended third line and beyond in BRCA mutation positive. So where Niraparib is not recommended, it is only as a maintenance or recurrent ovarian cancer regardless of BRCA mutation positive status. So platinum sensitive recurrent disease, if we see there are some phase 2 study 19 of Olaparib maintenance in the recurrent ovarian cancer, although doses were higher in this study, 400 milligram twice a day, and they have reached the concluding landmark like Olaparib has improved the PFS, almost doubled 4.8 with the placebo to 8.4 months in the phase 2 study. So then there was a phase 3 study for the same purpose, like platinum sensitive BRCA mutant recurrent ovarian cancer as a Olaparib maintenance. Means we have given the chemotherapeutic drugs and patient has achieved the good response, and then we are giving something to maintain the response. So that was a SOLO 2 trial, and inclusion we have said earlier. So here they have reduced the doses from Olaparib 400 milligram twice a day to Olaparib 300 milligram twice a day in the SOLO 2 trial. And then RECIST analysis was done in terms of PFS and overall survival outcome. So PFS, huge difference. We can very well see is roughly around I think more than doubled after 1.5 years, and even after that there is a plateau. So curve is not going down; it is maintaining their response even after 3-year time span. So then there was a NOVA trial which was based on Niraparib maintenance in platinum sensitive recurrent ovarian cancer. This was again phase 3 study, and here patients were having germline BRCA mutation positive. No germline BRCA mutation positive, there was 2 arms. In both arms they were compared with the placebo. In this NOVA study, if you see where the patients are germline BRCA mutant, so Niraparib is definitely far apart than placebo. Non-germline BRCA, even they have shown some benefit. Non-germline somatic BRCA, HRD positive. So where there is any suspicion of HRD positive and maintenance is there, So we can give the drug with the better outcome of the PFS.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Uh, Hello, Dr. Danny.
I think sir was
Hello, I think not connecting.
Sir, now you are unmuted. Sir, can you say something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so we
audible?
can hear you. Yeah, yes, sir, we can hear you. I'm just transferring presentation rights. I think,
Okay.
if you are not switching on your video, then also it is okay.
Okay. So slides are moving, right? So after this NOVA trial, which was for regarding this, I think, we have discussed the niraparib maintenance in germline BRCA mutant positive or even non-germline BRCA mutation. There is a benefit of niraparib, or even where there is no mutation but HRD is positive. HRD is positive, may be positive despite the absence of BRCA mutation, because there are so many other molecule. Therefore, there is a trend nowadays to do the 20 gene analysis for BRCA-ness, to assess the BRCA-ness. Now, there was another drug which was rucaparib as a maintenance in the platinum-sensitive recurrent ovarian cancer, that is ARIEL-3 trial, which was again randomized, double-blind controlled. And here they have taken the high-grade serous or endometrioid epithelial ovarian fallopian PPCs after more than equal to 2 prior platinum regimen, and PS was good. So 2-arm placebo versus rucaparib. So this was the experimental arm. And in this study also, ARIEL-3, they have shown BRCA mutant. There is a benefit in the PFS, like 16.6 months with the experimental drug. And those patients with HRD positive, so 13.6 months, or intention to treat population, also there is a good outcome. Therefore, this is recommended in this scenario, as we have seen earlier. So this was the SOLO 3 study in which they have assessed the olaparib as a treatment modality, not as a maintenance. So this was the SOLO 3 trial where olaparib versus chemotherapy was given in platinum-sensitive relapsed ovarian cancer with the germline BRCA mutation. Here also, they have shown the benefit in terms of oral response rate, If you to see the overall response rate is 72% as compared to 51 in the chemo arm, and where the patients have more than 2 prior lines of chemotherapy, there also overall response rate is higher, 85%. And patients where they have taken more than 3 prior lines of chemotherapy, even 60% response rate was still there with the olaparib in the Solo 3 trial. Then there were some other phase 2 study of olaparib. I think I will skip. These are only phase 2. We can skip this aerial study of phase 2. Yeah. So this was also although phase 2, but regarding niraparib ovarian cancer, where more than 3 prior chemotherapy regimen has been taken. So this was a quadral trial. This was a therapeutic arm and single arm only. Niraparib 300 milligram once a day, 28 days cycle until progressive disease. So here also they have shown some response as compared to placebo. So tumor response in the 4th line or later, HRD positive, platinum sensitive patients, and in BRCA mutant patient also there was a response. Even in non-BRCA mutation, they've shown some response. So first line maintenance and future direction. First line maintenance is the Solo 1 trial, means after the chemotherapy, which I said in the earlier slides, olaparib in the standard doses, which we are using today also, 300 milligram twice a day, as compared to placebo. Here they have taken the 2-year treatment of the lifespan. I would go back to the slide. So 2 year of treatment if no evidence of disease is there. So here recommendation of maintenance is for 2 years. And if you see the PFS, its curve are still separated even around at a 4-year lifespan. So maintenance is prolonged. This benefit is being maintained for long period of time. Even 3-year progression-free survival is taken as 60%. So good outcome in difference. Good outcome in Solo 1. So we should be aware of some side effect profile which we face in the olaparib patients. They do have nausea, fatigue, asthenia, or vomiting, which are cumbersome. Antiemetics are used in olaparib most in 35% of the patients. Still, they are facing sometimes nausea and vomiting, which are quite oftenly seen in 30 to 40% of patients. Regarding hematological adverse event, anemia is also quite commonly seen in olaparib. And median time to first onset, they are saying it's roughly after around 2 months or so of using this olaparib. And neutropenia is also seen, thrombocytopenia is also seen. Sometimes anemia is there and blood transfusion requirement is seen in roughly 23% of the patients. So this bar chart is showing months from the first dose, after how many months they are developing the anemia. So this is the green curve in which we can see the anemia is there all throughout there, and in fact in later months of time we keep on increasing. So we have to monitor the anemia, and blood transfusion if it is required we have to give in between. PARP inhibitor dosing, we know standard dosing we have been using olaparib 300 mg twice a day. There is a tablet form 100, 150, and although these two drugs are not available in India as of now. So we have been using only olaparib. So then for the completion sake, in the carcinoma ovary recent update, there was a trial which was published in this ESCO 2020. That was a desktop 3 study, and regarding secondary cytoreductive surgery, as of now the role is not fully defined, but in this study they have analyzed final analysis of this phase 3 trial, in which they evaluated survival benefit of secondary CRS, cytoreductive selected patient with platinum sensitive recurrent ovarian cancer. And in this study schema, another placebo was, another arm was where they have gone for no surgery, and straight away chemotherapy was recommended. So secondary cytoreduction was allowed. So what was the primary endpoint was the overall survival. Secondary endpoint was the progression-free survival. So in this study also, demographic profile was very well balanced among 2 arms. Median is more than 60. Prior platinum has been given in those, both platinum as well as taxane. So, surgical outcome, macroscopic complete resection was seen in 74%. GI tract dissection was also required in 35% patients also in this desktop 3 study, and outcome wise overall survival is better than the no surgery, 46 months versus 53 months in the secondary cytoreduction arm. Progression-free survival also was better. Based on this study, they recommended that secondary cytoreductive surgery can be offered in few selected patients. So this was the conclusion, and complete resection rate was 75% identified. So investigation recommended patients should receive eligibility screening for cytoreductive options at this setting. Thank you overall. So this was the recent things about the ovarian cancer, which we can incorporate in our day-to-day clinical practice. So